I'm Jeannie Mancini, president of the March for Life. The 52nd annual March for Life is going to be here before we know it. Some of you will drive throughout the night, and some of you are going to fly into our nation's capital. Thank you for your sacrifices for being here. This is the single most important human rights issue of today. Thank you for coming to the center of the free world in Washington, D.C. to give public witness to the inherent dignity of the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, the unborn, and their mothers. The March for Life is the largest annual human rights demonstration worldwide. You are making history by participating in this peaceful, loving protest. Your joy and perseverance as you march continually inspires us as we work towards protections for the unborn and our even more lofty goal to make abortion unthinkable. To make that happen, we need you not only to march for life, but also to advocate for life by meeting with your elected officials this January. Our hope is that this Marching 101 Pro-Life Advocacy Workshop will provide you with the tools and information you need to even more effectively advocate for life at the march and at home in your state. To join this important conversation, we have pro-life warrior Representative Ashley Hinson with us and our new March for Life President-elect Jenny Bradley Lichter, who will be moderating our discussion today. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson proudly serves Iowa's 2nd Congressional District since 2022. Hinson is an award-winning journalist, proud wife, and mother of two who previously served in the Iowa State House. As state representative, she worked successfully to balance the budget, cut taxes, and protect the most vulnerable in her community. In Congress, she continues to be a common-sense leader and pursues pro-growth policies. She's introduced and supported bipartisan legislation to improve child care access for working families in Iowa and is a member of the House Appropriations Committee. Congresswoman Hinson is also an active member of her community, regularly playing the violin at Antioch Christian Church and volunteering with local charities. Welcome. We are so happy to have you here with us today. And then our moderator, Jenny Bradley Lichter, has a wide-ranging legal and policy experience in public, private, and nonprofit sectors, including at the highest levels of the federal government. During the Trump administration, Jenny served in the White House as Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, where she led policy initiatives across the federal government to defend the dignity of human life. Prior to her White House experience, Jenny worked in the Office of Legal Policy at the U.S. Department of Justice and as an in-house counsel for the Archdiocese of Washington. She most recently served as the Deputy General Counsel at the Catholic University of America and is currently serving alongside me as President-elect for March for Life and will assume the role of President in February of 2025. Welcome to both of you. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too.
Thanks, Jeannie. Great. Thanks for being here, Representative Hinson.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so let's start with you, Congresswoman Hinson. We are so thrilled to have you join us today to talk about how you defend life in your role as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. And I know our marchers would love to first hear, why are you pro-life and how did you start working in the pro-life space?
Yeah, well, it's pretty simple. It's the right thing to do to support a culture of life here in Washington, D.C. And I think the reason why I ran for Congress was because of my kids. And I think about Max and Jax and everything that I can do for them. And so many other people who are wanting to have families and wanting to help support women in challenging times, right? And I think about, as a public policymaker, all that I can do to help be proactive in that space. And for me, being pro-life is not just about abortion, because I think typically that's the conversation it centers around, certainly, but it's about a whole spectrum of policy issues that we can support both here in Washington, D.C. and across the country to really help support women, families, and of course, and protect the unborn. And so I think I would always say this, I always want to err supporting a culture of life, and that's what I will continue to fight for here.
Amen to that. That is awesome. Your passion for life is really beautiful and really evident. So let's kind of drill down on your role as a policymaker. What are some specific pro-life policies, some specific bills that you're carrying in the House?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, I'm on the Appropriations Committee. So a lot of our fights have been in the past couple of years. We've been in divided government, and I was in the minority the first 2 years I served in Congress, where it was a Democrat trifecta. And very clearly, there's a contrast in viewpoint. I think there is a wide viewpoint even in the Republican Party on a lot of these pro-life issues, but what I think was important was making sure that we were standing up for taxpayers, and taxpayers shouldn't be funding these anti-life policies. So a lot of our work on committee was to make sure we were protecting longstanding riders, that were protecting and valuing the sanctity of life, not just here in the United States, but around the world. I think many people might be unaware, but a lot of our tax dollars flow to foreign countries, and some of those countries, if we don't specify it, will use them for forced sterilizations or anti-life policies. Or pro-abortion policies. And so we have a lot of things that we've done on committee to stand up and fight back against Democrats' agenda to do that. I think the other place where I've tried to focus is on students, making sure we're providing students with the right information about life and choosing life. And so my Pregnant Students' Rights Act actually passed the House this year, didn't pass the Senate, so we got some work to do over there, and maybe that's a 119th Congress conversation, but no, I think it's encouraging that we had at least 218 people who agreed it's important that students on campus know they don't have to choose abortion. They can have accommodations as a pregnant student to be able to finish their degree, continue their studies, go to those doctor's appointments they need to, and take tests when they need to, get excused from class. I mean, all the accommodations that they can get that people might not be aware of. And I think, and I would argue, a lot of schools don't want to tell people. And that's where we are as a culture. And we need to, again, push back against people who aren't willing to educate students on their rights, but also make sure students know, hey, we don't have to choose abortion. If we find ourselves in this position, we can choose life, and we can still have a good life and choose life.
I love that. Thank you for that bill. We're excited to support it and hope that we can see some good progress with it in this upcoming Congress. I think you're right. There's so much messaging that education and motherhood is an either or, right? Or that education and sort of professional fulfillment, or motherhood and professional fulfillment is an either or. And it's just not true. And I think it's so beautiful that you're really prioritizing how can we help college students really be able to exercise a genuine choice and pursue their hearts into motherhood and also finish their degree at the same time.
Yeah. And one story I would share on that, we actually had a woman in Cedar Rapids who became a university president who, when she was in college, she had that experience.
Wow.
She had a child when she was in college, and this was, a time when it probably wasn't very popular to be pregnant and on a campus. And she toughed it out and didn't know what her future would hold for her, but ended up becoming a college president in Iowa. Wow. So that's, I think, a great example of how your life will be fine. People want to take care of you. We need to surround women with love and care and the resources that they need. And, I always say this, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. You need to be willing to ask for help, but the help is there. And that's what I think is really important in this conversation.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit now about sort of cultural challenges or cultural and political challenges that have been facing the pro-life movement, particularly in the last few years with an administration, the Biden-Harris administration, that's been hostile to life in a lot of ways. What have you found most concerning, and how do you think pro-life Americans can best respond in terms of messaging? And you've talked about a little bit about that already, but in terms of positive messaging and in terms of policy advocacy.
Yeah. Well, I think there's just so much fear mongering right now, which I think has been the most frustrating thing for me to see, especially, we're coming out of a campaign cycle where abortion was the number one issue for Democrats, I think. And I don't think it ended up being the number one issue for voters. And I think there was definitely a disconnect there. But, one of the things I tried to do was get out there and say, no, they kept going to examples of a woman in Georgia who tragically lost her life. And that is terrible. Like, I never want a woman to end up in that position. And they were trying to make it out like, oh, us as policymakers, that's what we want. We want women to die. That is, nothing could be further from the truth. We care about the entire spectrum of life and the dignity of life. And so what I hope we can have conversations about going forward is that, there were all these conversations about life of the mother, right? And what that meant. of course, doctors are going to try to save moms in a terrible situation. And I think I found that to be very, very frustrating watching all that happen and the misinformation. So I would just encourage people, if you're watching and you have something to add to this conversation, please be willing to speak out. If you're a medical professional and you know what's out there is not true, speak up about it, because I think that adds credibility to the conversation, and it, most importantly, tones down the fear and the temperature around this issue, which I think has gone pretty nuclear in the past couple of cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeannie, do you want to jump in on that too?
Yeah, there's so much that I'm thinking. I mean, for starters, on the fear mongering, I think it's important to get this very basic fact out there that there's no law, no pro-life law in any state that would prevent any care for women, particularly miscarriage care. So there's just this fear mongering specifically about that. So that's just, it's, I have to say that the other side has no scruples when it comes to messaging on this, and that's really unfortunate. But sort of more culturally and more broadly speaking than just addressing that lie, you know, I think our biggest enemy is the confusion out there about the lie that a right to abortion is good for women. And it's, you know, our biggest enemy, it's not Planned Parenthood. Like, yeah, Planned Parenthood's really bad, but it's really this idea that a right to abortion is good for women. And so we have to continue doing our part to, amidst the confusion, whether it's the fear mongering that we're getting from the other side, or just sort of in this cultural reverberation of the overturn of Roe, where there's so much confusion about what it means to be a woman, what motherhood means, all these different things. I think we, whether it's as a pro-life elected official or at the March for Life, but we have to continue to speak with clarity and with confidence about the attractiveness of life. And the goodness of motherhood, the goodness of choice and giving women what they need to choose life and all of that, and to lean into this with a lot of confidence, because what we do have on our side is truth. We're on the right side of history with this. And to the extent that we continue to provide clarity and peace and even joy into this, it's so attractive, and hearts and minds can change. And, you know, at the March, we talk about, yes, we're working to make laws protect life, and that is so important, and it's incredibly important. And even more important is making abortion unthinkable. So changing hearts and minds so that the laws will be less important, right? And that's a loftier goal, but that we have to continue to speak into the culture in that way, again, with sort of just continued clarity into the confusion about the inherent dignity of the human person, of mothers, all of these different things. So yes, countering that lie, that's so important, I think.
And being compassionate in doing it. I think that's the most important part of the conversation, because it can be so divisive, and we shouldn't let it be divisive. We should be willing to have the conversation and confront it head on in a compassionate way. And I think about, you know, this is about telling the right stories here, about adding the value of life to our conversations. And, you know, as a policymaker, we hear from everybody on all sides of this issue, but I just want to share one anecdote that really was meaningful to me, because I think about how saving one life is worth it to me. I mean, and that's kind of my perspective on it. I had 2 opportunities when I was a state legislator to vote on pro-life policy. We had a 20-week abortion ban in Iowa, and then a heartbeat bill. So I had voted for the 20-week, and even that, I was, you know, out knocking doors and getting doors slammed in my face. And I was trying to have conversations with people about, you know, my record and why I took those votes. But I actually had someone come up to me and say, because of your vote on that, I have a daughter.
Oh, wow.
And I actually ran into him a couple weeks ago, and I said, please text me a picture of her. And he sent me a recent picture of her. And, you know, that,
what a moment.
You know, that was a 20-week bill, right? So think about that and what could be more pro-woman than now there's another young lady who has a chance at life and can have that experience. And you have a dad who has incredible joy in having a daughter. And so I just think about stories like that. And to me, that's what keeps me going in the face of all these headwinds of the negative conversations that can happen. What's more positive than that? And we saved a life as a result of that. And a woman chose adoption. So a woman was able to put her baby up for adoption, which is an incredibly pro-life policy that I think we can do more on. So I'm excited again about what's ahead for us in this area. it is about compassionate conversation, and it's about policies that I think you're right, Jeannie, can help change hearts and minds. And we just need to make sure that people know that these are options for them and that they're out there.
Yes. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah. This is a perfect segue, I think, into talking a little bit about advocacy, right? And trying to kind of arm our marchers, including our young people, to be effective advocates and really empower them to sort of engage with people like you, right? Elected members of Congress. So it sounds like from what you're saying that storytelling, kind of personal anecdotes, might be an effective advocacy tool. I'd love to hear more about that, and then any other really effective kind of advocacy tools that people can bring with them when they go and talk to their elected members of Congress.
Yeah. Well, I mean, storytelling is 100% what can change those hearts and minds. And I think about the impact of that story I just told, right? When he told me that, I mean, I had been through a lot as a policymaker. I'd faced a lot of people who were not happy with my vote, right? So that's what policymakers are up against. You have to be able to go home to your constituents and validate your position on an issue. And so, to have something like that, and you make sure you're doing the right thing. And so come armed with those stories about, how a pro-life policy could help you or could have helped you. One of the things that I think I've heard a lot about is the regret that comes with people who have abortion. Yes. So share your personal story. It may be raw, it may be painful, but having people understand that abortion has a negative impact on your mental health. We already have a mental health crisis in this country. And making sure that you can personify that and be real and raw, I think, is incredibly powerful to people on both sides of the aisle. And I think that, it seems that we have a partisan divide right now on this issue, but I think there are a lot of people, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, who desperately want to be pro-life, but because of the political dynamics right now are not voting that way. And so I think that stories like this could be the change factor that could hopefully help move people our direction.
I just thank you so much for everything you just said there. Representative Hinson is incredibly important. And here's what I want to say to everybody who's watching this right now. They might be very intimidated to come and share their story with an elected official, with someone like you. And they should know that story could change someone's heart. Yeah. I mean, we know people who've crossed the aisle on this one very much. And that, again, just reminding you're on the right side of history here, and to lean into this. And our theme for the March for Life this year is Why We March. It's really to encourage people to tell their stories about why they're pro-life. But I would encourage marchers to be very courageous in engaging with elected officials. Yeah. And I think that there is a fear that people won't want to listen to them, that they'll kind of get shut down. And just to hear you and your approach to this should be really kind of an invitation to our marchers to want to do that more and more.
It's our job to hear from you. Like literally, that's the job of a representative, is to hear from your constituents. And so I think, first of all, let me say this, like I still go to the grocery store. I buy I drive my kids to school. Like we're normal human beings, right? So come talk to us. Like I think the most important thing in this conversation is empathy. Please don't be afraid. Like we love to hear from you. We may not always agree on every issue, but I think the most important thing, and this is how I approach every policy issue, not just life, but it's like, hey, here's what my position is. If you don't agree with me, change my mind. If you agree with me, give me the stories and the ammunition I need to be able to continue to have that position. And so to anyone watching who is concerned about maybe they haven't called their representative's office before, or they haven't had a sit down with someone, please don't be nervous. Like I welcome people from all walks of life in my office all the time. And so that's fantastic. My approach.
Love that. So take that to heart.
Yeah, come see us.
And you think that's a widely shared perspective among your colleagues?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think that, everybody, in Congress, I had no idea, before I ran for office, I had no idea how many different, policy areas we'd be pulled in and what our schedule would look like. But, people want to hear from their constituents, because that, again, it informs good policy. And I think most of my colleagues here share that viewpoint.
Great.
That is great.
So, Jeannie, a lot of our viewers probably know that you will be concluding your long and really just incredibly grace-filled tenure as the president of the March for Life after the 2025 March. Your leadership has been so inspiring. It's been personally inspiring to me as someone who's been attending the March for a long time and hearing your words from the rally stage and at a lot of other places. So thank you, first of all. Just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done. Do you have any kind of parting, not really parting yet, but parting words of wisdom or special advice, just sort of based on your long tenure and all of the experience you've had and people you've gotten to talk to, words of advice for our marchers, especially all of the students, the young people who are going to be seeing this video, some of them on their buses, their overnight buses to Washington, D.C. What do you want to say to them?
Oh, gosh, thank you. Well, first of all, it's been the honor of a lifetime to run the March for Life and to to see so many incredible things happen during my time, not just within the march, but within the movement. Very consequential with the overturn of Roe, et cetera. And some incredible elections where, years ago we didn't get the media coverage that we would get now when you've got like the leader of the free world speaking at the March for Life. It really puts us on a map in a completely different way. And so it's just been such an honor. And I think the piece of advice that I'd most give, particularly to our young people, but really to everyone, is it's a famous quote, St. Catherine of Siena. It's be who you are and you will set the world on fire. And there is something in which there is a call in every heart, and it will be unique. I can't look at you, Jenny, and say, here's what your call is. Only you know what that is. But I'll borrow sort of a line from Hillary Clinton now. It takes a village, to pull. And it does. So we're all needed in building a culture of life. Like, to the extent that we respond to who we are created to be fully will help us to realize that day that abortion is unthinkable. And so be who you are and you will set the world on fire. Lean into this. There is a call for each of us to build a culture of life. So I think that's what it would be.
That is beautiful. Oh gosh, we're going to miss you, Jeannie.
Oh, well, you won't miss me too much because I'll be on the board.
Yes, absolutely. Thank God
still
for that.
Be around.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. Do you have any kind of particularly cool or favorite March for Life memories you want to share?
So many. Hard to count, but I guess one. Really quick. So one, the most senior White House official that we'd ever had speak at the March for Life before 2017 was the deputy director of the Domestic Policy Council, which Jenny then held later on. So who knew? And that was incredible to have that person speak. But the day that I was up on the stage and looked across and saw Vice President Pence and we got to catch each other's eyes, no one was up on the stage except for Secret Service and us at this point. We had our little white pins on, the Secret Service had put them on us, and looking out at the crowd and just thinking about all that had happened and all the significance that he would even want to be there and what that meant was truly a moment. I'll never forget it. And just kind of, we've remarked upon it a few times when I've seen him just kind of looking at each other and catching, I think for him too, it was quite an experience. He'd been there many times before, but not as vice president, standing vice president. So that was one. But also every year, getting up on stage, you'll see Jenny this year, and I'm sure you've seen Representative Hinson when you come up on stage, but just seeing the sheer crowd of young people out there and their joy, even if it's cold, they're like so excited to be there. You can't actually see the end of the crowd the way that the stage is. It's like it just seems to go on like to infinity almost, and there's nothing like just seeing the young people and their energy. There's nothing like it, and you know that a culture of life will be restored with these young people. It's just so inspiring.
Yeah, gives me a little faith in humanity, right?
Yes.
That people our young people still have that drive, like you said, set the world on fire and be willing to speak out about it. It's so courageous for them to come out and especially because we know some of the environments that they're going back home to, right? So a lot of you watching will probably be heading back to a college campus, right? And I hope you're inspired after the March for Life to be able to continue to advocate and advocate for a culture of life. And I think I just love, you're right. Seeing, President Trump and Vice President Pence and our leaders, who have really taken a pro-life stand, to see them, getting up in front of everybody and signaling this is my value statement, right? I think is incredibly impactful. I love getting all the selfies from people who are at the March for Life and seeing those people, because that's pride. That's pretty cool. I am proud to be here. I am proud to be standing for life. I'm proud to be supporting the culture of life. And I think you talk about channeling that passion into advocacy to go back to what we did before. The selfie is one thing in the moment, but turn it into something going forward. That's what I think that's really what will be really cool to see. That's awesome.
Jeannie, is there a particular hashtag that marchers should use to tag their selfie so that Representative Hinson
That's
can
right.
find them?
So I can search and look at all.
Absolutely. Hashtag why we march.
Yeah.
So it's really
Great.
inviting people to engage, to tell their stories, etc. So hashtag why we march.
Yeah, I can't wait to see all of those. All right. Any last words of advice or thoughts from either of you for our marchers before we wrap up?
I would say thank you. Thank you for marching. Thank you for taking a stand for life. It's an incredibly important time in our country to be talking about these policies, and I look forward to working with you on this movement for many years to come. I don't think our work is done in this space, and I think the next Congress, I'm very much so looking forward to continuing to support life, and I think it's going to be a good 2 years.
Absolutely. And I would just say changing culture takes a very long time. We could look at all sorts of stories like slavery, racial discrimination, et cetera. It takes a really long time to change culture. And so marchers, persevere.
Yeah. Be patient. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
Gosh, well, this has been fun, and it really has been such an honor to hear from both of you today. Your passion and your knowledge and your dedication to the pro-life cause is really inspiring.
Thank you.
Congresswoman Hinson, thank you so much for everything you're doing on the Hill. We love the legislation that you're bringing forward, and thanks for all your work protecting babies and their moms, as you said.
Yep.
Jeannie, your advice and perspective based on your long leadership is really invaluable. I think you have a singular place in the pro-life movement, and it's just always so much fun to hear from you. So thank you both. And then to our marchers, we're very much looking forward to seeing all of you at the National March for Life in Washington, D.C. on January 24th. See you then.
Before you go, I wanted to share what the March for Life Government Affairs team is up to here in Washington, D.C. I am Felicia Preissner, Vice President of Government Affairs at the March for Life, and Hayden Sledge is here with me, who serves as our Associate Director of Government Affairs. Our team is on Capitol Hill year-round, advocating for pro-life legislation that values and protects both women and their babies.
And we recognize that mothers deserve compassionate care and support, so we fight for policies that help both mom and baby flourish.
We need your help this January. When you come to March for Life, we need you to schedule a meeting with your members of Congress and advocate for the most fundamental human right, the right to life. Your members want to see and hear from you, just like Representative Hinson just told you. If you use the QR code here, you can find your members and their contact information. Schedule your meeting today.
And also be on the lookout for other useful information we will send to you via email, including information about different bills being voted on and other useful information and talking points. Use the QR code here to sign up for our email networks.
Thank you for being a voice for the voiceless. We need you today to not only march for life, but to be a voice for life.